Mia Carter never expected a lost dog to change her life. She was just a struggling single mum, running a small flower shop, doing her best to provide for her son. Her days were filled with early mornings, fresh bouquets, and the quiet certainty that love wasn't in the cards for her. And then Ethan Blackwood walked into her life, a billionaire, powerful, untouchable, a man who had everything except the one thing that truly mattered. Neither of them was looking for love, but fate had other plans. What happens when two people from completely different worlds cross paths in the most unexpected way? When walls built over years begin to crumble? When a man who has spent his whole life running from emotions finally meets a woman who refuses to let him hide? This is a story about love, fear, and the choice to fight for something real. And trust me, you won't want to miss a single moment. If you love heartfelt romance, slow-burn tension, and characters who will stay with you long after the last page, hit that subscribe button and join me on this journey, because love isn't just about finding the right person. It's about choosing them. And this is a love story worth choosing. So, are you ready to dive into a love story that almost never happened? Let's begin. A struggling single mom found a stranded puppy, and its owner, a billionaire, rewarded her in a way she never expected. Mia Carter had always believed in small miracles, not the grand, earth-shattering kind, but the quiet ones, the kind that kept her little flower shop, bloom and grace, running despite mounting bills, or the kind that made her 7-year-old son, Liam, smile even on the hardest days. Tonight, however, she wasn't sure if what she had stumbled upon was a miracle or just another problem waiting to happen. The rain had been relentless all evening, drumming against the windows of her shop as she closed up for the night. She pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders and stepped outside, locking the door behind her. The streetlights flickered weakly, their dim glow barely cutting through the darkness. She was about to hurry to her car when a faint whimper stopped her in her tracks. Mia turned, scanning the deserted sidewalk. Then she saw it. A golden retriever, soaked and shivering, curled up next to the front steps of her shop. Her heart clenched. At the sight, the poor thing was drenched, its fur matted with rain and mud, its eyes wide with something that looked painfully close to fear. "Oh, sweetheart," Mia murmured, crouching down. "Where did you come from?" The dog flinched, but didn't run. Instead, it lifted its head slightly, as if recognizing the kindness in her voice. Mia looked around, expecting to see someone frantically searching for their lost pet, but the streets were empty. She hesitated. Bringing a stray animal home wasn't exactly the most practical decision. Liam had allergies, and money was already tight. But how could she leave it out here in the cold? With a sigh, she made her decision. "All right, buddy," she said, gently extending a hand. "Let's get you inside before we both freeze." The dog hesitated for only a second before leaning into her touch. It was a silent plea for help, and Mia wasn't about to ignore it. Back at home, Liam's eyes widened the moment he saw the new visitor in their small apartment. "A dog?" he gasped, bouncing excitedly on his toes. "Mom, can we keep him?" Mia smiled but shook her head. "He's not ours, sweetheart. Someone out there is probably looking for him." Liam pouted but nodded, crouching beside the dog and scratching behind its ears. The golden retriever let out a content sigh, resting its head on Liam's lap. "He likes me," Liam whispered, as if it were the greatest discovery in the world. Mia's heart softened. It had been a while since she'd seen Liam this happy. She dried the dog with an old towel, fed him some leftover chicken, and finally, after setting up a makeshift bed in the living room, she snapped a picture and posted it on a local lost-and-found pet group, found near Bloom and Grace. "Sweet, well-groomed, must belong to someone. Please message if this is your dog." As she hit post, she felt a strange pang of disappointment. Whoever this dog belonged to, they were lucky. Because for now, at least, it felt like he belonged right here, Ethan Blackwood had lost count of how many times his assistant had called him today. He knew exactly why. The board was furious. His absence had stretched on too long, and people were beginning to ask questions. What kind of CEO disappeared without a trace? But Ethan didn't care. Not right now. He sat alone in his penthouse, scrolling through emails he had no intention of answering, a half-empty glass of whiskey on the table beside him. Outside, the city skyline stretched endlessly, cold and impersonal. Just like his life. Ever since his mother's passing 6 months ago, nothing had felt right. Work had lost its meaning. Conversations felt empty. People only cared about what he could offer them. And now, to make matters worse, his dog, his only real companion, was missing. Ethan ran a hand through his hair in frustration. He had checked all his usual spots, called every shelter, and even hired someone to search the area, but still nothing. Just as he was about to give up for the night, his phone buzzed, a notification from the Lost and Found group. His breath caught as he opened the post. There he was, his golden retriever, safe, and the woman who had found him. A florist. Ethan stared at the screen for a long moment. A florist. For a brief second, he imagined the kind of life she must have, a simple, peaceful one, untouched by the pressures of corporate takeovers and endless scrutiny. He envied her, and then he did something completely unlike himself. Instead of sending his assistant to retrieve his dog, Ethan grabbed his keys and decided to go himself. The next morning, Bloom and Grace smelled of fresh lavender and roses, a warm contrast to the cool autumn air outside. Mia was arranging a bouquet when the shop bell chimed. She glanced up and froze. The man who walked in was tall, sharply dressed in a black coat that probably cost more than her entire shop's monthly rent, with piercing blue eyes that held an unmistakable intensity. For a second, she thought he had walked into the wrong place. Then he spoke. "I believe you have something of mine." His voice was deep, commanding. Mia frowned. "I'm sorry." He stepped forward, and that's when she noticed his eyes soften slightly. "The dog," he clarified. "He's mine." Mia's stomach twisted. Of course, a man like this wouldn't be a stray dog's owner. He looked like he belonged in a glass skyscraper, not walking through small-town streets searching for a lost pet. But then again, the dog had been well-groomed. It made sense. Still, something about the way he said mine made her bristle. She folded her arms. "Do you have proof?" Her surprise, instead of getting offended, the man smirked. "I can describe the scar behind his left ear." "And his name is Bailey," Mia exhaled. "All right, wait here." When she returned with Bailey, the golden retriever's reaction was immediate. His tail wagged furiously, and he lunged at the man, licking his face with enthusiasm. The man, who had seemed so composed moments ago, actually let out a low chuckle. It was brief, but real. Mia saw something shift in his expression then. Something tired, lonely. She didn't know why, but for a split second she felt sorry for him. Then he straightened, the moment gone. "How much do I owe you?" he asked. Mia stiffened. "Excuse me?" "For taking care of him. I'll pay you whatever you think is fair." Her fingers curled into fists. "I didn't do it for money." His expression flickered, as if he wasn't used to people refusing his offers. For the first time, Mia saw something crack in the polished exterior of Ethan Blackwood, billionaire CEO, and she had no idea that this moment, this one small refusal, would change both their lives forever. The tension in Bloom and Grace was thick enough to cut with a knife. Mia Carter crossed her arms, standing her ground against the towering figure in front of her. Ethan Blackwood, billionaire CEO, was every bit as imposing as his reputation suggested. His presence filled the small flower shop in a way that made Mia feel oddly defensive, though she couldn't quite place why. It wasn't just his sharp suit or the way his watch, probably worth more than her entire yearly income, glinted under the warm shop lights. It was his attitude, the way he had so casually offered her money, as if her kindness had a price tag. "I didn't do it for money," she repeated, her voice firm. Ethan studied her, his piercing blue eyes scanning her face as if trying to decipher something. Most people would have caved under that gaze, but Mia held her ground. Bailey, still wagging his tail enthusiastically, broke the awkward silence by nudging Ethan's leg with his wet nose. Ethan sighed and crouched down, running a hand through the retriever's golden fur. His touch was gentle, and for the first time since he'd walked in, Mia saw something shift in his expression, something softer, more human. "He's been with me since he was a puppy," Ethan murmured, almost to himself. "Never wandered off like this before." Mia arched an eyebrow. "Maybe he was looking for a little adventure." Ethan smirked, standing back up. "Or maybe he just wanted to find someone nicer than his owner." The corner of Mia's lips twitched despite herself. Was that a joke? She hadn't expected Ethan Blackwood to have a sense of humor. "Well," she said, shaking off the strange moment, "Bailey is a sweetheart. You're lucky to have him." Ethan nodded, looking down at the dog as if only now realizing how much he'd missed him. Then, just like that, the moment passed, and his guard went back up. "Look," he said, straightening his coat, "I appreciate what you did, and I wasn't trying to offend you earlier." Mia raised an eyebrow. "You kind of did." Ethan exhaled sharply, looking as if he wasn't used to people calling him out. "I don't meet many people who do things out of kindness without expecting something in return," he admitted. Mia tilted her head, studying him. Was that sadness in his voice, or just exhaustion? "Well," she said, wiping her hands on her apron, "maybe you're surrounding yourself with the wrong kind of people." Ethan blinked, as if the thought had never occurred to him. A beat of silence passed. Mia shifted on her feet. "So, are you planning on just standing here all day, or are you going to take Bailey home?" Ethan let out a small chuckle, shaking his head. "Right. Yeah." He reached down and clipped Bailey's leash to his collar. Bailey looked between Ethan and Mia, almost hesitant to leave. Mia crouched to rub behind his ears. "Be good, buddy." Bailey let out a small whimper, and for some absurd reason, Mia felt an unexpected pang of sadness watching them leave. As soon as the door shut behind Ethan, Mia let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Her best friend Claire peeked in from the back room, where she had been restocking vases. "Okay, what the hell was that?" Claire asked, eyes wide. Mia sighed. "That was Ethan Blackwood." Claire's jaw dropped. The Ethan Blackwood, the guy on the Forbes list, the ridiculously rich, ridiculously handsome, ridiculously— Yes, all of that, Mia. Cut in, rubbing her temples. Claire leaned on the counter, smirking. "And what was he doing in our tiny flower shop?" Mia gestured toward the door. "Apparently, he lost his dog. I found him outside last night," Claire whistled. "Well, you do have a talent for attracting strays." Mia rolled her eyes. "Very funny." Claire grinned, but then sobered. "So what was he like? Was he a total jerk?" Mia hesitated, because the truth was, she wasn't sure. He had been arrogant, yes, and definitely used to getting what he wanted, but there had been moments, just small flickers, where she'd seen something else beneath the polished billionaire exterior. Something lonely, something lost. He was— Mia started, then stopped. "Complicated." Claire raised an eyebrow. "Complicated how?" Mia shook her head. "I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's not like I'll ever see him again." Claire hummed. "You sure about that?" Mia frowned. "Why?" Claire smirked, nodding toward the door. "Because he's standing outside." Mia spun around, and sure enough, there was Ethan Blackwood, staring through the window like he wasn't quite ready to leave. Their eyes met. And for the second time that day, Mia had the strange feeling that something had just shifted in her life. Ethan wasn't sure why he had stopped walking. After all, he had his dog. He had thanked the woman. He had no reason to linger, and yet he stood outside Bloom and Grace, watching Mia through the window as she laughed at something her friend had said. There was something different about her, about this place. She hadn't treated him like everyone else did. She hadn't looked at him like he was some untouchable billionaire, nor had she tried to impress him. She had simply been real. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, Ethan found himself wanting to be around someone who didn't care about his wealth or his name. He exhaled, shaking off the thought. Ridiculous. He had work to do, board meetings to attend, an entire empire to run. He didn't have time to be standing outside some flower shop, wondering why a single mother and her little dog had gotten under his skin. And yet, instead of walking away, he pushed the door open again. Mia looked up, startled. "Did you forget something?" she asked. Ethan hesitated. Then, against his better judgment, he said, "Would you like to get a cup of coffee?" Mia blinked. "What?" He cleared his throat. "As a thank you for taking care of Bailey." Mia studied him, as if trying to figure out what game he was playing. Finally, she sighed. "I have a shop to run." Ethan smirked. "So do I. Mine's just bigger." Mia rolled her eyes, but then, to his surprise, she smiled. "Fine," she said. "But if this is some billionaire guilt thing, I'm paying for my own coffee." Ethan chuckled. He wasn't sure why, but he had a feeling. This woman was going to be trouble, the best kind of trouble. Mia wasn't entirely sure how she had ended up here, sitting across from a billionaire in a small coffee shop, sipping on a latte that, frankly, tasted far too expensive for her usual budget. She had agreed to coffee on a whim, half out of curiosity, and half because, despite everything, there was something strangely compelling about Ethan Blackwood. He was infuriatingly confident, but there was something beneath the surface, something raw and unpolished, like a diamond, still buried deep beneath layers of stone. Across the table, Ethan studied her, his sharp blue eyes assessing her the way a businessman might evaluate a deal. Mia exhaled sharply, setting her cup down. "You know, if you're trying to intimidate me, it's not going to work." Ethan smirked, taking a slow sip of his espresso. "I wasn't trying to intimidate you." She arched an eyebrow. "Fine," he amended, setting his cup down. "Maybe a little, but only because I can't figure you out." Mia folded her arms. "What's there to figure out? I'm a florist. I run a small business. I found your dog. End of story." Ethan shook his head, leaning back in his chair. "See, that's what I don't get. You found a purebred golden retriever, a dog that's clearly worth a lot of money, and instead of trying to sell him or keep him, you fed him, took care of him, and then refused to take anything in return." Mia frowned. "Why does that surprise you?" Ethan exhaled, tapping his fingers against his cup. "Because," he said after a pause, "people don't usually do things for free." Mia tilted her head, watching him. He wasn't being arrogant. He was being honest, and suddenly it clicked. This was a man who had spent his entire life surrounded by people who only cared about what he could offer them: wealth, power, influence, and for the first time in what was probably a very long time, he had come across someone who wanted nothing from him. Mia sighed, softening slightly. "Not everyone sees the world as a transaction, Ethan." Ethan smirked, though there was little amusement behind it. "You'd be surprised." Mia studied him for a moment, debating whether she should just let it go, but something about the way he had said it, like it was a simple fact, like he had long since given up on the idea of genuine human connection, bothered her. So, instead of dropping it, she leaned forward. "What about you?" she asked. Ethan blinked. "What about me?" Mia shrugged. "When was the last time you did something for someone without expecting anything in return?" Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it. Mia smirked. "Exactly." Ethan narrowed his eyes at her, and for the first time she saw something flicker. In them, a challenge, maybe even admiration. He wasn't used to being called out, and Mia wasn't used to backing down. A tense silence settled between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. If anything, it felt like the beginning of something neither of them could quite name yet. By the time they left the coffee shop, the sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the city streets. Ethan walked beside Mia, hands in his pockets. Bailey, trotting happily between them. "So what's your story?" Ethan asked suddenly. Mia glanced at him. "What do you mean?" "I mean, how does someone like you end up running a flower shop?" Mia exhaled, adjusting the strap of her purse. "Not much to tell. I've always loved flowers. My parents used to own a small shop when I was little. It wasn't much, but it was home." Ethan nodded, waiting for her to continue. Mia hesitated. She didn't usually talk about this, but then my dad passed away, and my mum, she just couldn't keep it going on her own. So, when I got older, I decided to open my own place. Something that felt like home again. Ethan was quiet for a moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than before. "That's admirable." Mia smirked. "Wow. Was that an actual compliment?" Ethan chuckled. "Don't get used to it." Mia rolled her eyes, but smiled. She didn't know why, but hearing him say that made her feel seen. They reached Mia's shop, and she turned to unlock the door. "Wait," Ethan said suddenly. Mia paused, glancing over her shoulder. "What?" Ethan hesitated, running a hand through his hair. He stopped, exhaling. Mia frowned. For the first time since she met him, he looked uncertain. Ethan cleared his throat, shoving his hands deeper into his pockets. "Never mind, it's nothing." Mia tilted her head. "You sure?" Ethan nodded, his expression unreadable. "Yeah, see you around, Mia." And with that, he turned and walked away, Bailey trotting happily beside him. Mia watched him go, a strange feeling settling in her chest. What had he almost said, and more importantly, why did she suddenly wish he had said it? Mia had always believed that some people came into your life for a reason, but she wasn't sure if Ethan Blackwood was meant to be a blessing or a complication. Ever since their coffee shop conversation, she found herself thinking about him more than she cared to admit. There was something undeniably intriguing about the man, a billionaire who had everything but somehow seemed like he had nothing. And yet she told herself that their paths had crossed by chance. Nothing more, which is why when Ethan walked into Bloom & Grace again 2 days later, dressed in a sharp charcoal suit that made him look even more out of place in her small flower shop, her heart did a very inconvenient little stutter. She quickly masked her surprise. "Lost your dog again?" Ethan smirked, slipping his hands into his pockets. "Nope, just figured I'd test a theory." Mia raised an eyebrow. "Which is?" "That you're not just a florist," he said, stepping closer. "You're also the only person in this city who isn't afraid to call me out on my nonsense." Mia fought a smile. Damn him for being charming. Claire, who had been watering a display of roses, took one look at them and not so subtly disappeared. Into the back room, probably to eavesdrop from a safe distance. Mia crossed her arms, leaning against the counter. "So, what exactly brings you here, Mr. Blackwood?" Ethan hesitated, as if debating whether to say what was on his mind. Then, in a voice that was softer than she expected, he said, "I don't know." That stopped Mia short. She had expected another smooth line, another smirk. But there was something raw about the way he said it. For a long moment neither of them spoke. Finally, Ethan sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. "Look, if you're busy, I can go—" "No!" Mia interrupted before she could stop herself. "Stay!" Ethan glanced at her, surprised. Mia sighed. What was she doing? This was a man who lived in a completely different world, a man whose suits probably cost more than her monthly rent. And yet, for reasons she couldn't quite explain, she wasn't ready for him to walk away. "Since you're here," she said, grabbing a pair of gardening shears, "you can help me." Ethan blinked. "Help you?" Mia nodded toward a row of potted plants. "I need to repot these, and my assistant conveniently vanished the second you walked in." Ethan exhaled a laugh but didn't argue. Instead, he took off his jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and followed her lead. And just like that, Ethan Blackwood, Billionaire CEO, was getting his hands dirty in a flower shop. To his surprise, Ethan didn't actually mind the work. It was strangely therapeutic, the smell of fresh soil, the warmth of the sun filtering through the windows, the way Mia hummed under her breath as she worked. "I've never done this before," he admitted, carefully transferring a small succulent into a new pot. Mia glanced at him. "What, repotted plants?" Ethan smirked. "No, manual labor." Mia rolled her eyes. "I'm sure your private chef and personal assistants handle all the hard stuff for you." Ethan didn't deny it, because it was true. His life had always been about efficiency, about having people handle the details while he focused on the bigger picture. But here, in this tiny flower shop, with dirt under, his fingernails and Mia Carter challenging him at every turn, he felt lighter. For the first time in months, maybe even years, he wasn't thinking about his company, or board meetings, or stock prices. He was just existing, and he liked it. "You're not half bad at this," Mia teased, watching him. Ethan smirked. "Maybe I missed my true calling." "Doubtful," she said. "You don't strike me as the type to slow down." Ethan hesitated. "Maybe that's the problem." Mia's hand stilled. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and for the first time, she saw past the billionaire, past the arrogance. She saw a man who had spent so much time running that he didn't know how to stop. A man who, maybe, wasn't as untouchable as he wanted people to believe. As they finished up, Ethan dusted off his hands. Mia handed him a damp towel, and as he wiped his fingers clean, she found herself blurting out, "Tell me something about yourself." Ethan arched an eyebrow. "Like what?" Mia shrugged. "Anything. Something real." Ethan exhaled, thinking. Then, after a long moment, he said, "My mom used to love roses." Mia blinked. "Your mom?" Ethan nodded, staring down at the flower. In front of him, "She used to say that roses were like people, beautiful but full of thorns." Mia studied him, sensing the weight behind his words. "I'm guessing she was the kind of woman who didn't take any nonsense," she said. Ethan chuckled. "You have no idea." There was something in his voice, a softness, a sadness. Mia wanted to ask more, but before she could, Ethan's phone buzzed, and just like that, the moment was gone. His jaw tightened as he checked the screen. His entire posture shifted, the weight of the outside world settling back onto his shoulders. "I should go," he said, rolling down his sleeves. Mia nodded, watching as he grabbed his jacket. "Thanks for the help, by the way." Ethan smirked. "Don't get used to it." Mia rolled her eyes but smiled, and then, just as he was about to walk out, he hesitated. He turned back to her, his expression unreadable. Then, in a voice that was almost hesitant, he said, "Mia?" Mia looked up. For a second, it looked like he was going to say something important, but then he just shook his head, smirking slightly. "See you around," and with that he was gone. That night, as Mia closed up the shop, she found herself thinking about Ethan Blackwood, about the way he had looked at her when he talked about his mother, about the way he had rolled up his sleeves and helped her even though he had no reason to, and most of all, about the way he had almost said something before he left. What had he been about to say, and why did she suddenly wish he had said it? Mia had always believed in keeping things simple. Her life revolved around Bloom and Grace, her son Liam, and making ends meet. It was a delicate balance, one she had carefully maintained for years, And then Ethan Blackwood had walked into her flower shop, and nothing had felt simple since. She told herself it was nothing, a few conversations, an afternoon spent repotting plants, an unexpected glimpse into his past. But the truth? She felt something when he was around, something she hadn't felt in a long, long time, which is why when she saw his name flash across her phone screen that evening, her heart did an inconvenient little flip. Ethan Blackwood. Are you free tomorrow? Afternoon. Mia frowned at the message. Short, direct. Typical Ethan. She hesitated before replying. Mia. Depends. Why? His response came almost immediately. Ethan Blackwood. I need a favor. Mia stared at the screen, debating whether she should just ignore him, but curiosity got the better of her. Mia. What kind of favor? A pause. Then, Ethan Blackwood, meet me at the Regency Hotel at 2 p.m. I'll explain then. Mia rolled her eyes, vague, mysterious. Again, typical Ethan. And yet, as she set her phone down, she already knew she was going to show up. The next afternoon, Mia found herself standing in front of the Regency Hotel, an impossibly sleek building that screamed luxury. She was out of place. The valet barely glanced at her old sedan as she parked it, and the doorman looked surprised when she stepped inside, as if expecting someone more expensive. Mia ignored them. She spotted Ethan near the bar, dressed in yet another perfectly tailored suit, looking effortlessly composed as he scrolled through his phone. When he noticed her, his expression softened, just slightly, but enough for Mia to catch it. You came, he said, slipping his phone into his pocket. You said you needed a favor, she replied, folding her arms. So, what is it? Ethan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Then before she could react, he said, I need you to pretend to be my date. Mia blinked. I'm sorry, what? Ethan smirked, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. My investors are in town. They think I'm a workaholic with no personal life. My assistant thought it would be good for them to see me with someone normal. Mia gaped at him. And you thought of me? Ethan shrugged. You're the only normal person I know. Mia stared at him. Then before she could stop herself, she burst out laughing. Ethan frowned. What? Mia shook her head, wiping a tear from the corner of her eye. I don't know what's funnier. The fact that you think I'm normal? Or the fact that you're asking me to play your fake girlfriend? Ethan sighed, rubbing his temples. So that's a no? Mia bit her lip. She should say no. There was no reason for her to get involved in Ethan's world. And yet, the idea of watching Ethan Blackwood squirm in a social setting? Too tempting. To resist, Mia smirked. Fine, I'll do it. Ethan looked surprised. You will? Mia nodded. On one condition. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Which is? You owe me. Ethan smirked. Deal. An hour later, Mia sat at a private dining table, surrounded by some of the most powerful business people in the city. She had expected them to be intimidating, but to her surprise they were charming, curious, and, more importantly, they seemed genuinely fascinated by her. So Mia, one of them, an older woman named Evelyn Sinclair, leaned forward. How did you and Ethan meet? Mia opened her mouth, but Ethan beat her to it. She saved my dog, he said smoothly, wrapping an arm around her chair. Mia's breath hitched at the unexpected contact. Evelyn smiled. That's adorable. Mia forced a grin. Yeah, it was fate. Ethan glanced at her, smirking slightly. Something like that. Mia rolled her eyes, but couldn't fight the warmth spreading through her chest. What the hell was happening? The dinner went surprisingly well. By the time they stepped outside, the city was glowing under streetlights, the air crisp with the scent of autumn. Mia turned to Ethan. Well, that was unexpected. Ethan smirked. You did good. Mia raised an eyebrow. That almost sounded like a compliment. Ethan chuckled. Don't get used to it. A beat of silence. Then in a voice softer than before, Ethan said, "Thank you." Mia frowned. "For what?" "For tonight." He exhaled, shoving his hands in his pockets. "For making me look like a normal person." Mia tilted her head, studying him. "Ethan, you are a normal person." Ethan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Not in my world, Mia." Mia hesitated, sensing the weight behind his words, and before she could stop herself, she reached out and took his hand. Ethan stilled. "Mia, come with me," she said suddenly. Ethan blinked. "What?" Mia squeezed his hand. "Come with me right now. Just trust me." Ethan hesitated. Then, slowly, he nodded. "All right." And as Mia led him away from his world of power and wealth, Ethan had no idea that this would be the moment that changed everything. Mia wasn't sure what had possessed her to grab Ethan's hand and tell him to follow her. Maybe it was the way he had laughed without humor, as if he truly believed he wasn't capable of being normal. Maybe it was the way he had thanked her, the weight behind those two simple words making her chest tighten. Or maybe, just maybe, she wanted to prove to him that life wasn't just boardrooms, investments, and carefully curated appearances. It was messy, spontaneous, real. And tonight, Ethan Blackwood was going to experience that. They walked in silence for a few blocks, the sounds of the city humming around them. The sharp, modern skyline of Ethan's world slowly faded into the charming, warm glow of Mia's neighborhood, a place filled with small businesses, coffee shops that closed too early, and families who knew each other by name. Finally, Mia stopped. In front of O'Malley's, a small, old-fashioned pub, nestled between a bookstore and a bakery. Ethan frowned. "A bar," Mia smirked. "Not just any bar, the best dive bar in the city." Ethan arched an eyebrow, clearly skeptical, but followed her inside anyway. The place was nothing like the high-end lounges Ethan was used to. It was warm, filled with laughter and the smell of beer and fried food. A group of musicians played in the corner, their melodies weaving through the room like an old friend's embrace. Mia waved to the bartender. "Hey, Tommy!" Tommy, a burly man in his 50s, grinned. "Mia, haven't seen you in a while." His gaze shifted to Ethan. "And you brought company." Mia glanced at Ethan, who looked mildly uncomfortable but trying not to show it. She smirked. "Yeah, he's new. Be nice." Tommy chuckled. "What's your poison, fancy man?" Ethan, still taking in his surroundings, glanced at Mia. "What do you recommend?" Mia grinned. "2 shots of whiskey and a plate of fries." Tommy raised an eyebrow but nodded. "Coming right up." Ethan leaned against the bar, eyeing her. "Whiskey and fries?" Mia shrugged. "Classic combo." Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. "I have a feeling I'm going to regret this." Mia smirked. "Probably." A few minutes later, the whiskey burned smooth and warm down Ethan's throat, and the fries were shockingly good. Mia watched as he slowly relaxed, his shoulders losing their usual tension, his posture less guarded. "So," she said, dipping a fry into ketchup, "what's the most spontaneous thing you've ever done?" Ethan smirked. "Define spontaneous." Mia rolled her eyes. "You know, something unplanned, unexpected." Ethan thought for a moment. Then finally he said, "I left a board meeting early once." Mia stared at him. "That's it?" Ethan chuckled. "What? That was a big deal." Mia groaned. "Okay, you're officially the most boring rich person I've ever met." Ethan grinned. "And how many rich people do you know?" Mia pretended to think. "Counting you?" "Yeah." "1." Ethan laughed, and it was a real laugh this time, deep, unrestrained. Mia's stomach flipped. Damn it! She had made Ethan Blackwood laugh, and it felt good. Too good. She quickly looked away, reaching for her drink. Ethan watched her, something unreadable in his gaze. "You do this often?" he asked. Mia raised an eyebrow. "What?" "Bring billionaires to dive bars." Mia smirked. "Oh, all the time. You're actually the 3rd one this week." Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. "Lucky me." Mia rolled her eyes, but her heart was beating faster than it should. The band started playing a new song, soft, slow, and achingly beautiful. Mia sighed, setting her glass down. "I love this song." Ethan glanced at the small dance floor. "You dance?" Mia grinned. "I try." Ethan hesitated, then, before he could overthink it, he reached for her hand. Mia blinked. "What are you—" "Come on," he said, pulling her toward the floor. Mia wasn't prepared for the way his touch sent warmth curling through her. She swallowed hard as he placed one hand on her waist, the other still holding hers. The world around them faded. It was just Ethan and Mia swaying to the music, wrapped in the soft glow of the dim lights. "I don't do this often," Ethan admitted. Mia tilted her head. "Dance? Let people in." Mia's breath caught, because for once there was no arrogance in his voice, no charm, no sarcasm, just honesty. Mia's fingers tightened around his. "Maybe you should start," she whispered. Ethan looked down at her, something shifting in his gaze, something dangerous, something that made Mia's pulse stutter. Then suddenly he pulled away. Mia blinked, startled by the abruptness of it. Ethan cleared his throat, stepping back. "I should probably go." Mia frowned. "Ethan, thank you," he said quickly, "for tonight." Then, before she could say anything else, he turned and walked out of the bar, leaving Mia standing there, heart pounding, wondering what the hell had just happened. Ethan sat in the back of his car, staring out the window, his mind a mess. That dance, that moment. It had been too much. He had spent years perfecting the art of keeping people at arm's length, and then Mia Carter had waltzed into his life with her sharp wit, her kindness, her maddening ability to make him feel something, and it terrified him, because what if he let her in and lost her? What if she saw the real Ethan Blackwood, the one he wasn't sure was worth loving, and walked away? So he had walked away first. It was safer that way. At least, that's what he told himself. But deep down, he already knew. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Mia told herself she wouldn't think about Ethan Blackwood. She told herself that the moment at O'Malley's, the laughter, the whiskey, the slow dance that made her pulse race, was just a fluke, that it didn't mean anything. But the truth, she hadn't stopped thinking about it, about the way he had looked at her, like she was something he wasn't sure he was allowed to have. About the way he had pulled away so suddenly, as if getting too close to her was dangerous. And now? Now it had been 5 days since she'd heard from him. Not that she was counting, except she was, and that annoyed the hell out of her. Mia sighed as she clipped stems behind the counter at Bloom & Grace, trying to ignore the way her heart sank a little every time the bell over the door chimed. Every time she thought maybe, just maybe, it would be him. But it never was. "Okay," Claire said, leaning against the counter. "Spill." Mia blinked. "Spill what?" Claire gave her a pointed look. "Oh, I don't know. Maybe the reason you've been walking around all week like someone stole your favorite flower arrangement?" Mia groaned. "I'm fine," Claire smirked. "That's exactly what someone who is not fine would say." Mia rolled her eyes. I don't know. I haven't heard from Ethan since the bar." Claire raised an eyebrow. "And that bothers you?" Mia hesitated. "Did it?" Yes, she admitted, exhaling. "It does," Claire shrugged. "Maybe he's just busy." Mia snorted. "He's a billionaire, Claire. He could have texted if he wanted to," Claire hummed, watching her. "And what if he's scared?" Mia frowned. "Scared of what?" Claire smirked. "You dummy," Mia scoffed. "That's ridiculous." But deep down she wasn't so sure, because Ethan had looked at her that night like she was something he wanted, but couldn't let himself have. And now he was gone. That evening, Mia took Liam to the park. It was their little tradition, an hour of fresh air after school before heading home for dinner. Liam was on the swings, his laughter ringing through the crisp autumn air when Mia felt it. That unmistakable sensation of being watched. She turned her head, and her breath caught Ethan, standing near the tree line, hands in his pockets watching them. Mia's pulse kicked up. What the hell was he doing here? Before she could overthink it, she pushed off the bench and made her way toward him. Ethan straightened as she approached, his expression unreadable. "You're stalking me now?" Mia asked, crossing her arms. Ethan smirked. "Not intentionally." Mia arched an eyebrow. "Uh-huh, because it's totally normal for you to just happen to be at this exact park, at this exact time?" Ethan hesitated. Then finally, he sighed. "I didn't know you'd be here," he admitted. "I just needed to clear my head." Mia studied him, sensing there was more to that statement than he was saying. "Did it work?" she asked. Ethan exhaled a laugh. "Not really," Mia softened. "Ethan, what's going on?" Ethan hesitated, his gaze flickering to Liam, who was still laughing on the swings, oblivious to their conversation. Then, in a voice so quiet Mia almost didn't hear it, he said, "I'm not good at this." Mia's stomach tightened. "At what?" Ethan swallowed. "Letting people in." Mia felt her breath catch, because this was it. This was the moment she had felt coming since the day he walked into her flower shop. The moment where Ethan Blackwood, the untouchable billionaire, finally cracked. Mia took a slow breath. "Ethan." "I like you, Mia," he said suddenly, his voice rough. "More than I should." Mia's heart slammed against her ribs. Ethan raked a hand through his hair, looking away. "But I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be normal," Mia guessed. Ethan exhaled sharply. "Yeah." Mia hesitated. Then, gently, carefully, she reached for his hand. Ethan stilled. "You don't have to be perfect, Ethan," she murmured. "You just have to be real." Ethan looked down at their hands, his fingers twitching slightly as if debating whether to pull away. But he didn't. Instead, he held on. And for the first time, Mia saw something in his eyes that she hadn't seen before. Hope. The moment was perfect, which is probably why Ethan panicked, because he wasn't supposed to feel this way. Not about Mia, not about anyone. So he did what he did best. He let go, stepped back, built the wall again. "I should go," he said abruptly. Mia frowned. "Ethan!" But he was already moving, already pulling away, already leaving her behind. Mia watched as Ethan Blackwood, the man who had just admitted he liked her, walked away without looking back. And this time, she wasn't sure if he would come back. That night, Mia lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Liam had long since fallen asleep, but her mind refused to shut off. She had seen it, the way Ethan had looked at her before he left. Like he wanted to stay. Like he wanted her, but wanting and choosing were two different things. And tonight, Ethan had chosen to walk away. Mia swallowed hard, rolling onto her side. She had spent years building a life that didn't rely on anyone but herself. She had survived heartbreak before, and if Ethan Blackwood thought she was going to wait around for him to figure out what he wanted, he was wrong, because Mia Carter wasn't a woman who waited. She was a woman who moved forward, even if her heart didn't want to. Mia had always believed in second chances. She had built a life around resilience, around getting back up, even when the world knocked her down. But what about someone who didn't even try? Someone like Ethan Blackwood, who had looked at her like she was the only real thing in his world, only to walk away without a backward glance. It had been a week since that night at the park. A week of silence, a week of anger bubbling beneath the surface, mixing with something she refused to name. And now, standing behind the counter at Bloom and Grace, clipping the stems of fresh tulips, Mia told herself she was over it, over him. And then the bell above the door chimed. She looked up. And there he was, Ethan. standing in the middle of her flower shop, looking like a man who had been battling demons and losing, his usually immaculate suit was slightly wrinkled, as if he hadn't slept well. His hair was tousled, like he had run his hands through it 100 times. But his eyes, those damn blue eyes, were the worst, because they were filled with something close to regret. Mia swallowed hard, forcing her voice to stay steady. "You're late," Ethan frowned. "Late for what?" Mia raised an eyebrow. "For whatever excuse you're about to give me." Ethan exhaled, his jaw tightening. "Mia, no," she said sharply, setting the flowers down. "You don't get to just show up here after a week of nothing. You don't get to disappear and then waltz in like, 'I'm sorry.'" The words stopped her cold. Mia blinked. "What?" Ethan sighed, stepping closer. "I'm sorry for leaving, for—" He hesitated. "For wanting this, and being too much of a coward to handle it." Mia stared at him, and for the first time she saw it. Fear. Not arrogance, not indifference, just fear, and damn it, she understood. She had spent years being afraid of letting people in too, but that didn't mean she was going to make it easy for him. Mia folded her arms. "You don't get to be afraid, Ethan. Not when you're the one who keeps running." Ethan exhaled sharply. "I know." A beat of silence, then softly he asked, "Can we talk?" Mia hesitated, then, against her better judgment, she nodded. They sat on the worn leather couch in the back of the shop, surrounded by the soft scent of lavender and fresh earth. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on his knees, looking like a man who wasn't sure where to start. Finally, he sighed. "I don't know how to do this, Mia." Mia tilted her head. "Do what?" "This." He gestured between them. "You, us, any of it." Mia exhaled. "Ethan, my mother," he said suddenly, cutting her off. "She was the last person I let in." Mia stilled. Ethan swallowed hard, staring at his hands. "She was the only one who didn't care about the money, who saw me, really saw me. And when she died, everything else felt meaningless." Mia's chest tightened. "I buried myself in work," Ethan continued. "I convinced myself that if I kept moving, if I kept winning, I wouldn't have to feel anything." He finally looked at her, and God help her, the pain in his eyes nearly broke her. "But then you happened," he whispered. Mia's breath caught. Ethan exhaled, shaking his head. "You happened, and suddenly everything I thought I had under control wasn't anymore." Mia felt her pulse slam against her ribs, because she had never expected him to admit that. She had never expected Ethan Blackwood, the man who built walls, so high no one could touch him, to look at her like she was the one thing he didn't want to lose. Mia swallowed hard. She could feel the weight of what he wasn't saying. He was scared, of feeling something real, of letting her in only to lose her too. And Mia understood that fear, because hadn't she spent years telling herself that love wasn't worth the risk? But looking at Ethan now, she knew the truth. It was. So she made the choice for both of them. Mia leaned in, just slightly. "You don't have to be perfect, Ethan." Ethan exhaled, shaking his head. "I don't know how to—" "Then let me teach you." Ethan stilled. Mia reached for his hand, lacing their fingers together. A small touch, but one that sent something electric through the air. Ethan looked down at their hands. Then, slowly, carefully, he squeezed back. And Mia knew, for the first time, he wasn't running. For the first time, he was staying. That night, Ethan didn't leave. He stayed at the shop helping Mia close up. His hands dusted with soil from a last-minute flower arrangement. It was small, simple, but it was real. And when he walked her to her car, standing beside her under the soft glow of the streetlights, Mia felt something shift between them. Something that wasn't just chemistry, something that wasn't just attraction. Something that felt a lot like the beginning of a love story neither of them had been expecting. Ethan took a slow breath. Then, in a voice so quiet she barely heard it, he asked, Can I see you tomorrow? Mia's lips curved. You, better, she murmured, and as he watched her drive away, Ethan Blackwood knew one thing for certain. For the first time in a long time, he was exactly where he was meant to be. Ethan Blackwood had never been the kind of man who second-guessed his decisions. His life was built on logic, precision, and control, a finely tuned machine that allowed no room for distractions. And yet, here he was, standing outside Bloom, Grace for the third time this week, his hands in his pockets, his heart pounding harder than he'd ever admit. It had been 2 days since Mia had told him not to be perfect, just to be real. 2 days since he had held her hand, and, for the first time in years, chosen to stay instead of run. And now he was here because he wanted to be. Ethan exhaled. Pushing the door open, the scent of fresh flowers and warm earth greeted him, wrapping around him like a quiet welcome. Mia looked up from behind the counter, and when she smiled, just slightly, just enough, Ethan felt something settle inside him, something that felt a lot like home. Mia hadn't expected Ethan to actually follow through on his words. She had thought maybe he'd disappear again. Maybe let his fears get the better of him, but he kept showing up. He stopped by in the mornings, bringing coffee and watching as she arranged bouquets. He helped stock shelves, carried heavy deliveries, even watered plants, comically bad at it. At first, until she taught him how, and every time she looked up he was there, not as Ethan Blackwood, the billionaire CEO, but as Ethan, the man who was trying, and Mia, she was falling for him, fast. One evening, as they closed up the shop, Ethan hesitated. Mia noticed. "What?" she asked, leaning against the counter. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "I want you to come with me somewhere." Mia arched an eyebrow. "Oh? And where exactly are we going?" Ethan exhaled. "There's a fundraiser event tomorrow night. My company is hosting it. I need to be there and—" He hesitated. "I want you to come." Mia blinked. A fundraiser. In his world, Mia had never been one for fancy events or glittering ballrooms. She had spent most of her life in the real world. One where people worked hard, where money wasn't an endless stream of security. She wasn't sure she belonged in his world, but then Ethan spoke again, softer this time. "Come as my date." Mia's stomach flipped, because this wasn't just an invitation. This was Ethan choosing her, publicly, unapologetically. Mia exhaled. "I don't have anything to wear to something like that," Ethan smirked. "That's the easiest problem I've ever had to solve." Mia rolled her eyes but smiled. "Fine, but if I trip in high heels, it's your fault." Ethan chuckled, and for the first time, there was no hesitation in his eyes, just certainty. The event was held at the Blackwood Hotel, a grand venue filled with chandeliers, soft music, and people who spoke in polished tones. Mia felt out of place. The moment she stepped inside, she had spent years working for every dollar she had, fighting for every opportunity, and now she was standing in a room full of people who had never known struggle. Ethan, sensing her discomfort, leaned down. "You okay?" Mia exhaled, adjusting the sleek navy gown he had insisted on getting her. "I feel like I'm in the wrong movie." Ethan smirked. "I'll be your plot twist, then." Mia laughed despite herself. Then a voice interrupted them. Well, Ethan Blackwood, bringing a date. Didn't think I'd see the day." Mia turned to see a tall man in his 40s, sharp suit, sharp smile. Ethan's jaw clenched. "Stark," Mia frowned. "Friend of yours?" Stark chuckled. "Something like that." His eyes flickered to Mia. "And you are?" Mia lifted her chin. "Mia Carter," Stark smirked. "Ah, the florist. I've heard about you." Mia raised an eyebrow. "You have?" Stark nodded. "Ethan's been different lately. People notice when the cold-hearted CEO suddenly stops acting like a robot." Mia glanced at Ethan. "And is that a good thing?" Stark tilted his head. Depends. Are you planning on staying? Mia stiffened. She didn't miss the implication. Behind his words, people like her didn't last in Ethan's world, and maybe he was right. Mia forced a smile. Guess we'll find out. Stark chuckled, giving Ethan a knowing look before walking away. Mia turned to Ethan. Who was that? Ethan exhaled sharply. Someone who thinks he knows me. Mia frowned. And does he? Ethan hesitated. Then he took her hand. No, he said. But you do. Mia's breath caught, because in that moment she realized Ethan Blackwood wasn't just letting her in, he was choosing her. Later that night, after the event, Ethan drove her to the rooftop of the Blackwood Hotel. Mia shivered as the cool night air brushed against her skin. Why are we here? Ethan leaned against the railing. Because I wanted to show you something. Mia turned, and her breath caught. The city stretched below them, glittering like a sea of stars. Ethan watched her, a small smile playing on his lips. You once told me I needed to slow down, to stop running. Mia nodded. Ethan took a breath. I think I finally understand what you meant. Mia's heart clenched, because this wasn't just a view. It was Ethan telling her that he was done hiding. Done running. Mia swallowed hard. So what happens now? Ethan turned to her, and then, slowly, carefully, he reached for her. His hand found her waist, pulling her closer, his touch warm against the night air. Mia's breath hitched, and then he kissed her. It was slow, deep, and devastatingly real, and Mia knew in that moment that there was no turning back, because Ethan Blackwood wasn't just falling for her, he already had, and God help her, she had fallen for him too. Mia had never been the kind of woman who dreamed of fairy tales. Her life had been built on hard work, survival, and the quiet acceptance that love wasn't always meant to last. But now she was standing on the rooftop of the Blackwood Hotel, her lips still tingling from Ethan's kiss, and she felt like she was stepping into a story she had never dared to imagine. Ethan watched her carefully, as if waiting for her to pull away. Mia exhaled slowly. That was... Ethan smirked. No, Mia narrowed her eyes. Cocky as ever, I see. Ethan chuckled, but there was a tenderness behind his amusement, something quiet and uncertain, because this was new for him too. Mia reached for his hand, lacing their fingers together. So what now? Ethan's smile faltered. And that's when she saw it, the hesitation, the uncertainty, and for the first time since she had met him, fear. The next few days were perfect, almost too perfect. Ethan spent more time at Bloom and Grace, helping Mia with small tasks, learning how to arrange flowers with a focus that made her laugh. He took Liam to the park, letting the boy climb all over him like a jungle gym, and Mia's heart clenched every time she saw them together. It felt real, too real, and maybe that was the problem, because Mia could feel it, the weight of what wasn't being said. Ethan was holding back. Something was on his mind, something dark, heavy, and inevitable, and Mia wasn't sure if she was ready to hear it. It happened on a Friday night. Ethan had taken her to dinner, not a lavish gala, not a five-star restaurant, just a quiet little spot on the corner of town, where no one recognized him as a billionaire. They had laughed, talked, held hands under the table. For the first time, Ethan Blackwood wasn't the CEO, the untouchable businessman. He was just Ethan, and Mia let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, this could last. Until his phone rang. Ethan stiffened. Mia saw it the moment his expression changed, the shift from a man in love to a man trapped in a world he couldn't escape. He hesitated before answering. Yeah? His voice was clipped, professional. Mia sat quietly as he listened, his jaw tightening with every second. When he hung up, she already knew. Something was wrong. "Ethan," she asked carefully. Ethan rubbed his forehead. "I have to go." Mia blinked. "Go where?" Ethan sighed, standing up. "Something's happening at the company. I need to handle it." Mia swallowed hard. "Ethan, I'll call you later," he said. And then, just like that, he was gone. Mia stared at the empty seat across from her, and for the first time in weeks she felt the sharp sting of reality settling in. Because no matter how much she wanted to believe that Ethan was different now, his world would always come first. That night, Mia tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Ethan hadn't called, and for the first time she wondered if she had made a mistake. Claire, always the voice of reason, sighed as she sat across from Mia at the shop the next morning. "You knew this wasn't going to be easy," she pointed out. Mia exhaled. "I know." Claire leaned forward. "Do you love him?" Mia's stomach twisted, because the answer was yes. But what if love wasn't enough? Ethan didn't show up at the shop for 2 days. Mia told herself not to care, that this was just a reminder of who he was, that she had been naive to think he could change. But when he finally did walk through the door, looking exhausted, his tie loosened, his hair disheveled, she didn't feel angry, she felt hurt. Ethan stepped closer. "Mia," she held up a hand. "Don't." Ethan's jaw tightened. "It wasn't intentional." Mia exhaled. "I know, and that's the problem." Ethan frowned. "What are you saying?" Mia looked at him, at the man she had let into her heart. "I'm saying that I can't compete with your world, Ethan." Ethan's expression darkened. "This isn't about competition." Mia shook her head. "Then what is it? Because right now it feels like I'm always going to be second place." Ethan's hands clenched into fists. "Mia, But he didn't finish because he didn't have an answer. And that was the moment Mia realized the truth. He cared so damn much. But he was still too scared to choose her. And Mia Carter wasn't a woman who waited for someone to decide whether she was worth it. So she stepped back, and Ethan Blackwood, for the first time in his life, watched someone walk away from him. Mia stood in her apartment that night, staring at her reflection. She had spent years telling herself that love was a risk she couldn't afford. And yet, she had taken that risk with Ethan, and now she wasn't sure if he was ready to take that risk for her. Her phone buzzed. "Ethan." She exhaled, hesitating. Then finally, she let the call go to voicemail, because if Ethan wanted to fight for her, he would have to prove it. Not with words, but with actions, and for the first time Ethan Blackwood was the one who had to decide if love was worth the risk. Ethan Blackwood had spent his entire life making calculated decisions. He knew how to analyze risks, predict outcomes, and control every variable. But he had never fought for something he couldn't control, until now. Because now, he was standing outside Bloom and Grace, staring through the window at the woman he had spent weeks trying to convince himself he didn't need. The woman he had walked away from. And for the first time in his life, he knew exactly what he wanted. Mia, not as a distraction, not as an escape, as his future. Mia glanced up as the bell above the door chimed. Her heart stumbled in her chest the second she saw him. Ethan stood in the doorway, rain clinging to his suit, his hair damp, his eyes locked onto hers like she was the only thing keeping him grounded. Mia swallowed hard, forcing herself to stay calm. "Ethan." He stepped forward, hands clenched at his sides, as if he was afraid she'd run before he could say what he needed to say. "I was wrong," he said, voice rough. Mia exhaled. "About what?" Ethan's lips pressed together. "About everything." Mia's fingers curled around the edge of the counter. "Be specific." Ethan took a slow breath, then he closed the distance between them. "I was wrong to walk away," he admitted. "I was wrong to think that my life, my world, was too complicated for you." Mia stayed silent, watching him carefully. Ethan exhaled, shaking his head. I told myself that loving you would be a mistake, that it would make me vulnerable, that I'd lose myself." He paused, his gaze intense, raw. "But the truth is, I lost myself the moment I let you go." Mia's breath caught. Ethan reached for her hand, gently, hesitantly, as if giving her the chance to pull away. She didn't. "I love you, Mia," he said, his voice quieter now. "I don't care about my world, my company, or what anyone else thinks. I care about you. I care about Liam." He swallowed hard. "And I want a life with you." Mia's chest tightened, because this wasn't the smooth, confident billionaire she had first met. This was Ethan, the man, not the CEO, the man who was willing to risk everything for her. Mia searched his face, looking for any hesitation. There was none. She exhaled, finally allowing herself to feel the weight of what this meant. Then she smiled. "Damn it," she whispered. Ethan frowned. "What?" Mia shook her head, gripping his hand tighter. "I love you too." Ethan's eyes darkened, relief flashing across his face. Then he kissed her, and this time he wasn't going anywhere. The next few months weren't perfect. Ethan had to learn how to balance his world and hers, how to step away from his office and show up for the small things. Mia had to learn to trust that he wouldn't run again, and Liam, well, Liam had already decided Ethan was part of their family. "Ah, you gonna marry my mom?" he asked one night over dinner. Ethan nearly choked on his wine. Mia snorted. Liam shrugged. "What? It's a fair question." Ethan cleared his throat, glancing at Mia. "Guess I should start looking for a ring then." Mia rolled her eyes but smiled, because for the first time in her life, she didn't have to wonder if someone was going to stay, because Ethan already had, and he always would. A year later, on a warm autumn evening, Ethan brought Mia back to where it all began, to Bloom and Grace. The shop was closed, but inside the lights were dim, soft music playing in the background, and in the center of the room, a single bouquet of roses. Mia frowned. "Ethan, what is this?" Ethan turned to face her, his expression steady, sure. "I told you once that my mother loved roses," he said, "that she thought they were like people, beautiful but full of thorns." Mia nodded. "I remember." Ethan exhaled, stepping closer. "I spent my whole life believing that love was dangerous, that it would make me weak." He took her hands. "But you proved me wrong." Mia's throat tightened. Then Ethan dropped to one knee. Mia gasped. Ethan looked up at her, his heart in his eyes. "I don't need perfection, Mia. I don't need a carefully planned life." He smiled softly. "I just need you." Mia felt tears sting her eyes. Then she laughed, because this was Ethan Blackwood, the man who had once been too afraid to feel, now asking her to spend forever with him. She knelt down, wrapping her arms around him. "Yes," she whispered. Ethan exhaled, pressing his forehead to hers, and for the first time in his life he knew he had everything he had ever needed. Mia Liam, and a love story that had never needed perfection, just two people willing to fight for it. The wedding was small, intimate, and perfect. Liam walked Mia down the aisle, beaming as he handed her off to Ethan, and when the vows were exchanged, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Not because it was a grand fairy tale, but because it was real. Two people who had fought their fears, their pasts, and their own doubts, and won. And as Ethan kissed his wife, pulling her close, he knew he had made the right choice, not just to love her, but to stay. And for Ethan Blackwood, that was the greatest victory of all. Wow, what a journey. Love, heartbreak, second chances. This story had it all. But now I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below and let me know. I love seeing how far our community reaches. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. so you never miss another great story. Your support means the world, and it helps keep these beautiful stories coming your way. Also, what was your favorite moment in the story? Let's chat in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. You're amazing. See you in the next one.